Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about how women act around attractive men and what it means based on research. The research is going to be in the description box, but we're going to talk about it so that if you guys don't have access to it, you will be able to at least understand some of the fundamentals. Now, we've made videos like this before, but a lot of you guys still want more, and there is so much details in the research about this, and I feel like this is helpful to a lot of people. And so the first one is that I'm going to explain it. Well, we're going to talk about what it is and then we'll explain it. She tends to engage in subtle grooming behaviors. And I'm going to talk about what that means and why. So, what it means is she might be adjusting clothing, for example, things like that, playing with her hair, adjusting jewelry. But of course, also, this could be an indication that she has just habits like that, or she's uncomfortable with her clothing, or she's just that could be something that she just does in general. And so you're going to see it's in combination with other behaviors as well. But the reason why is this is actually a visual display, psychologically and biologically, that she's signaling availability and interest. And interesting enough, even from fundamentals that are not humans, a lot of animals, women tend to, like female animals, they tend to try to signal availability so that the male can show interest, or that, let's say, males can do whatever they need to do to signal that he's wanting her, right? So that's typically what we see in animal behavior. And actually, we see this with humans as well. And this is a perfect example of it. The next one is very similar. The first one we talked about was grooming behaviors, but this second one here, and this research it's fundamental, 1985. But I know a lot of you guys don't like older research, but this one is incredibly fundamental and you guys might like this. Overall, it's about the nonverbal courtship patterns in women. And there's also context and consequences, and you'll like it if you're able to see it. And what we found is that actually women display more nonverbal courtship behaviors, flirting signals, for example, in situations where they're likely to encounter potential mates, as well as when they do encounter a potential mate from her perspective. And these examples will be like adjusting posture, smiling, laughing, or even laughing at some of his jokes as an indication. This is not her saying directly, "I like you." These are non-verbal. Even though they're vocal, they're non-verbal, okay? Like laughing is vocal. But the next one I think is really interesting as well. And we've touched on this, but I'm going to break it up. We've touched on a very specific point of this. I've made an actual video on this, but her specific gaze behaviors are what I want to touch on, because how women gaze at somebody does signal interest, and we're going to break it up. So what we see is brief glances is more common for women than with men. Men are a little bit more fixated, whereas women, we see it's more brief glances, and it's usually followed by repeated looks and eventually longer gazes, which signal attraction. And so we're going to go over that again so that you understand that it's a process, whereas for men, it's usually just one thing. For women, it's an element of all of these things, usually in this particular order. So brief glances, followed by repeatedly looking. So a little bit of brief glances, and then she's repeatedly looking. So actually the brief glances is just in higher frequency as that moment goes on, the process. And then eventually those brief glances turn into longer gazes and could be even a fixation of a glance at that point. And so that signals attraction. Now, these behaviors were systematically observed in naturalistic settings, and some of these were actually like bars and cafeterias. And so I thought that was really interesting because we can understand the courtship patterns of ladies by just understanding that a lot of these things might be more natural depending, but of course the setting makes a difference as well. I don't know if she'll do this if you guys are in school together or you guys are colleagues. It's going to be a little bit harder, in my opinion, to see these things. Even if she is looking, she might be a little bit more conscious of it because the situation is a little bit less appropriate for connecting romantically, depending on the society. The next one is actually women use I want to explain this. There's a specific, this research was in 1995, so a little bit newer, decade newer than the one we were just talking about. Women use a very specific posture when they're targeting for enhanced physical visibility for the potential male that they're attracted to, okay? And I'm going to explain that particular one. So basically, it's any body movement that enhances her physical visibility, but it's not going to be so extreme where it's like she's waving her hands out up in the air or something like that. It's usually, which you guys might not even think is aggressive, but for women it can be. She's usually leaning forward towards you, tilting her head towards you, open body orientation instead of shy or a little bit. And some women might be shy, so it really depends. But comparison to where her natural disposition is, she's a little bit more open or leaning forward towards you. And it is specific to the particular lady, because if she's someone who's very extroverted and she's always in the middle of everybody or always talking to friends and things like that, towards you, it might be just a little bit more of her body language tilted towards you. Whereas if a lady is very shy and she's not in the middle of all these conversations, but she's a little bit more like leaning towards you, or maybe asking particular questions, and her body language is towards you, or maybe her phone is towards you when she's holding it, that is a targeted posture that enhances physical visibility, whether she consciously knows it or not. And very likely she doesn't know consciously that she's doing that. And so a lot of times women don't even realize if they're attracted to someone right away. It takes some time, which I understand can be annoying. They might understand that they're trying to figure out if she's interested, but her understanding that she is fundamentally deciding that she wants to be with this person, that takes a little longer for women. And the next one is she treats you, people don't like this. This research was 1972, but there's a lot more research. This one's just a fundamental one. She treats you with more leniency. Women, based on research, they treat specifically attractive men with more leniency than she does with someone she's not attracted to. Unfortunately, women who have a little bit more mental health issues, they do this to such an extreme, they actually allow men to mistreat them. But we're going to talk about that another video. I've made videos on that. A lot of you guys who are returning to this video and you've seen other of my videos, you've seen other videos I've made, you know that I've talked about this before. Women, they're lenient with the person that they like, and it can be frustrating because if you're not the guy that she likes, she's going to be more, it feels like she's more harsh to you compared to the guys she likes. So you'll know if this is happening. The next one is physical indicator. Physical touch is a strong indicator of interest, okay? And so women who are attracted to men, they may lightly touch him. So it's very different from how men are attracted. So if we've seen this in research, men who are on a date, for example, he might move her physically, like he might hold her waist, or he might, be comfortable embracing her a certain way right off the gate. He might not, maybe some men who are more shy or uncomfortable might not do that, but they have thought about it or they want to consider it. Women, they're much more brief about these things, and their interest, it doesn't show as often, which is why men have a hard time understanding if a woman is attracted to them, because the way he does it is it's so obvious. Like, it's very direct, it's very clear, it's very assertive to some extent. And I don't mean that you guys are assertive or bad people. I'm not saying that. I don't think assertive is bad. It just, in comparison to her, she's much more passive. And so it's going to be lightly touching his arm, shoulder, or briefly touching his hand, like briefly in a conversation. That increases the likelihood of reciprocated interest based on research. And that is why subconsciously she's doing those things. And so a lot of this is subconscious. It doesn't necessarily mean she doesn't know or she does know. Women build up these types of things. That's why if you haven't, I don't know if you've seen this, but if you look at other videos made for women, or if you have friends that are females, all of my friends are females, and a lot of them, at first they didn't really like the guy, and then 2 months into it, she's like obsessed with him. It happens all the time. If you have female friends, you know how often that is. Women just take like a little bit longer. Men, it's either yes or no, typically. I'm not saying all you guys are like that, but usually that's how it is. So I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.